What is going on, everybody? This is Mr. Martin here in Mr. Martin's Math Corner. We are talking about the quadratic formula, and today we're going to use it to solve quadratics that are not factorable. So sometimes we get those quadratics that you just can't factor. However, you can use the quadratic formula. You can even use it for quadratics that you can factor. I met kids that just like to use the quadratic formula all the time because it always works. And then we got this thing also called the discriminant. This kind of just gives us a sneak preview of how many solutions we're going to have, or if we're going to have one of those no solutions. All right, so a little bit to know. This is our formula right here. So we got negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then this part that is underneath the radical, the expression underneath here, this is what we call the discriminant. And this gives us a look of how many solutions our quadratic will have, and this little chart lets you know. Okay, so if your discriminant is positive, you're going to get 2 solutions. If it ends up being 0, you're going to get 1 solution, and if you have a negative, you're going to get 0 solutions, or no real zeros, as you can call it. So it's very important that you pay attention to this. That way when you're working through it, you're like, all right, I should at least have 2 answers here, or hey, I ended up with a square root of 0, so I should probably only have 1 solution here. All right, so there's not much more to it other than just using the formula. Okay, so I just got a ton of different examples here, and we want to do what we do all the time with quadratics. We always want to get these into standard form, and then we want to find our A, B, and C values. Okay, so I'm going to walk through a couple, and then I'll have you guys pause and do some, and then get that practice in. So this first one, if we take a look, it looks like we are already in standard form. So there's nothing that we need to move around. The first thing we might want to do is find our A, B, and C values. So let's go ahead and do that. So our A value is going to be this 1. Okay, and then our B value is going to be that 4, and then our C value is going to be the 3. Okay, and then all we are doing, and remember, anytime you substitute, you always want to substitute using parentheses, because all of these signs here, the radical, the plus or minus, that negative, the 2, that 4, everything, these are all part of that formula. All we are plugging in is the B's, the A, Z, and the C. All right, so always substitute using parentheses. So first off, we got that negative sign, and then I'm going to put in parentheses. I'm going to put in my B, which is 4, and then I'm going to do plus or minus. I'm going to put that radical sign. I like to draw it kind of long, so I'm going to write a lot of stuff in here. I'm going to put that parentheses. I'm going to put my 4. I'm going to square that. Then I have the minus 4, and now I can plug in my A, and then I can plug in my C. All right, and this is going to go all over 2 times my A value, which is 1. Okay, what I recommend doing here, okay, let me go ahead and pop this up real quick. All right, so I got my graphing calculator up here. I always recommend work out your discriminant first. So that is this part right here. Let me go ahead and highlight that for you. Oops. Why is that not working? There we go. All right. You should always evaluate this part under the radical first, and then see if you can actually square root it, or if you end up with a radical, because you can't simplify it. So I like to just plug this into my calculator as I see it. So I got that parentheses, I got that 4. I'm going to square it. Minus 4 times 1 times 3. Okay, so here I'm just letting the calculator do the work. Now, of course, if you didn't have a graphing calculator, you could just do it on a basic calculator. Just make sure you follow the order of operations. All right, so this is going to end up being 4. All right, so we won't need the calculator anymore. I'm going to take this down, and I'm going to write that 4 underneath the radical. So we got negative times 4, which is negative 4. Then I got my plus or minus square root of, we said that was 4, all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, So sometimes you can leave the solution like this depending on whatever teacher you have, um, depending on what they're asking for. Some would want you to get rid of the radical, especially if you can square root it, because we want to always simplify as much as we can. So square root of 4 we know is 2, so we got this negative 4 plus or minus, negative 4 plus or minus 2 all over 2. Okay, and then now since we have a plus or minus here, this is where we want to do what we did in that previous section where we write our two different expressions. That way we can simplify both of them, because we're actually going to have two solutions here. So this first one is going to be negative 4 plus the 2 all over 2, and then the second one is going to be negative 4 minus the 2. Okay, so make sure that you get both, and then let's go ahead and simplify this. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2 divided by 2 is going to be negative 1, and then negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. So this one now we can see our solutions is n is equal to negative 1 and negative 3. Okay, very good. So if you took a look, you could have actually factored this. This could have been, you know, n plus 3 times n plus 1. But I chose this example here because I wanted you to see that even if you can factor it, you can still use the quadratic formula. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our second one. This one is not in standard form, so we want to go ahead and make this in standard form. Let's go ahead and move everything to the left. So this is now going to become r squared plus 7r minus 30. And then don't forget we got this set equal to 0. And then we can find our a, b, and c values. If you try to do the a, b, and c before you're in standard form, you might have your signs wrong. So always put it in standard form first. So we got 1, 7, and negative 30. All right, so let's go ahead and start plugging these in. We got negative, parentheses, I'm going to put my b, plus or minus square root of my b value squared, so 7 squared, minus 4 times my a value times my c value. All right, and this is going to be all over 2 times my a value. So this becomes negative times 7, which is negative 7, plus or minus the square root. And I went ahead and chunked all this out already. Bam, 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 mental calculations. I got 169, and it is a positive 169, and this is all over the value 2. So 169, can we square root that? And this is where you just kind of want to play around on your calculator a little bit, but if you remember your perfect squares up to some of the high teen numbers, you can tell that this is actually 13. So we're going to do negative 7 plus or minus 13 all over 2. And then I want to make sure I get both answers here, so I'm going to do negative 7 plus the 13 all over 2. And then I'm also going to do negative 7 minus the 13. So make sure that you're writing these out twice. So negative 7 plus 13, that's going to give me 6 over 2. This is going to be negative 7 minus 13, which is negative 20 over 2. And then once I go ahead and simplify those, this becomes what, 3, and this becomes negative 10. So 3 and negative 10. Those are my solutions. All right, not too bad, right? It's all a matter of substituting and then evaluating using the correct order of operations. All right, go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try this third one here on your own, and then come on back. All right, welcome back. So hopefully you got 1 and negative 1. So to get this in standard form, I had to add that 8 to both sides, which gave us that 2. Okay, and then we plug these into our formula. That 0 goes here and here, our a value here and here, and then our c value down here. So remember, if you don't have a linear term, like here we got the b squared, but there is no b value, that just means your b value is 0, because 0 times b would give you b. All right. And then I ended up crunching all this out and I got a 16, and we know that the square root of 16 is 4, so this ends up being a positive 4 over 4, and then also the negative 4 over 4, and then when you simplify these down you get 1 and negative 1. Alright, so we got a few more examples because some of these are going to end up with radicals. So there are a few different ways that you can list a solution. It's important that you guys see these because if you're checking your work with an online calculator, or you're using some sort of math platform that wants you to have your answers in a certain way, you might have to do a little bit of finagling to get them how you need to present them. So we're going to go through that here. Okay, so this first one, let's go ahead and get this into standard form. I need to add this 4m to both sides and then subtract that 23. So this is going to be 12m squared plus 4m minus 23 is equal to 0. Let's go ahead and write down our ABCs. 1, 2, 3s. So this A is 12, and then we got a positive 4 and a negative 23. Okay, so this one actually cannot be factored. If you tried to factor the ones on the previous page, those ones could, but the quadratic formula will always work. This one we actually need to use the quadratic formula because we are going to end up with a radical. So let's go ahead and plug this in. So we got negative times my b value, which is 4, plus or minus the square root of my b value squared minus 4 times my a value, 12, times my c value, negative 23. Okay, and then I'm going to put this all over 2 times 12. Boom, look how big this is. All right, now let's go ahead and start simplifying this down. Negative times 4 is negative 4, plus or minus. We got this radical. I already did this in my calculator, and it comes out to 1,120, which is a big number. And then we got 2 times 12, which is 24. Okay, so when you get this giant number here, this is where you kind of want to just have even a basic calculator with you. You do want to see if you can divide by a perfect square. If you try to factor tree out 1,120, it's going to take you quite some time. So I usually just like to try dividing by some of the lower numbers because the bigger ones usually don't work. Let's go ahead and divide this by, well, we know we can't do 25, right? Because that's got to end in like 50s, 100s, 150s, 200s. 25 definitely won't go into 120. So the next perfect square after that would be 36, and that doesn't work. We end up getting a decimal there. So let's try maybe 16 will work. Divided by 16. All right, so 16 does work. So we can actually simplify that radical, that 1120. Remember, that's going to be the same as 16 times 70. Square root of 16 times square root of 70. So you knew how to do that in the previous section, so I'm just going to write the next step. This is going to turn into negative 4 plus or minus 4 radical 70. And if you don't know how to get from here to here, just please go back and visit one of the previous videos. And this is all over 24. Okay, so this is one way that you could leave your solution. Sometimes, oops, not a good color there. Sometimes teachers will take this. Okay, me myself, I like to simplify a little bit more if we can. So I'm going to write something here to the side, just as a reference. You don't need to write this down. But remember, if we had something like 5 plus 3 over 8, right? We could actually split this up as 5 over 8 plus 3 over 8. Okay, because remember, if we have the same denominator, we can add the tops. So we can go from something like this to this, or if we want, we can go from this to this. And this is a very helpful skill set to remember and recall from previous sections, because this is how we would want to simplify this solution right here. So I got this plus or minus this over this. So this means this term and this term both have a denominator of 24. Okay? So this first one I can write as, right, negative 4 over 24 plus or minus 4 radical 70 over 24. Oops, let's fix that up. Okay. And then now we can simplify this fraction. So this negative 4 over 124 is going to be a negative 1/6. Okay, and then we have a plus or minus, and 4 over 24 again is 1/6, but 1 times radical 70 is just the same as radical 70 over 6. Okay, so this could be one solution, or one way of writing the solution as well. Okay, now if they indeed ask you to write it as two separate answers, okay, you could then do it as negative 1 over 6 plus, you can do the top one, plus radical 70 over 6, and then separate it by a comma, and have negative 1/6 minus radical 70 over 6. Okay, so there are different ways that this can be represented. Let me go ahead and box these up for you guys. So 1, 2, and 3. And again, the reason I said this is helpful, because if you are using some sort of assistive technology to help you check your work, hopefully not do your work, but check your work, you might see any one of these variations, and if it's not something that you know, or that you see, like if you got number 1 down but the computer told you this, you're like, hey, that's not the right answer, when in actuality it is the right answer. Okay, so moving on, let's go ahead and try this one. So we got a lot of stuff to move, so we got to move this 3a over in this 10, so that's going to be 7a squared. We're going to have a minus 3a, and then I'm also going to subtract this 10, so 15 minus 10 is going to give me positive 5. And then let's find our a, b, and c. So my a is 7, my b is negative 3, and my c is positive 5. All right, let's go ahead and plug this in. So we got negative, my b value, which is negative 3. You see how useful the parentheses is? This is going to let us know this is going to change to a positive value. Then we got plus or minus the square root of this negative 3 squared minus 4 times my a value of 7 and my c value of 5. This is going to be all over 2 times 7. So this negative times negative now becomes a positive 3. We got plus or minus. The discriminant after you calculate it is going to be the square root of negative 131, and this is all over 14. However, if we remember from the things to know, if we get a negative here, we are not going to square root a negative, so this is going to be our no solution. We just stop right there. So these ones are probably going to be your favorite. All right, go ahead, pause the video, and then come on back and see what you get. All right, welcome back. So you probably got no solution because you are super smart, and that is what I got. Remember, if you get down to that square root of a negative, just call it quits and slap down no solution. All right, very good. So I got 3 more examples here. I'm going to work through one of them, and then I'm going to let you guys do the other 2. All right, so this first one here, 4x squared minus 19 plus 9x. We got this other 9x over here. Let's go ahead and subtract that. So this now becomes 4x squared minus 19. We just have no more x terms, so this is going to equal 0. Put down my a, my b, and my c. I got an a of 4, a b is 0, and then my c term is negative 19. All right, let's plug this in. Negative 0 plus or minus square root of 0 squared. This is going to be minus the 4 because that is always there, times my a, which is 4, times my c, which is negative 19. And this is all over 2 times my a value of 4. All right, negative times 0 is just 0, so we don't even need anything out front. I'm just going to hit that up with the plus or minus. Okay, and then this all cranked out is going to be 304 all over 8. Okay, and then I want to see, can I reduce or simplify this radical rather? 304, can we divide that? Let's try it. 304, maybe 16 goes in. Bam, sure does. All right, 16 is a good number. So we got plus or minus square root of 16, which is 4. And then we have that remaining radical 19 in there. This is all over 8. Okay, so we got our two solutions. So we could leave it like that, or we might want to do the positive and simplify this 4 over 8, which is going to be 1 over 2. So 1 times radical 19 is just radical 19. I actually don't even need that plus there because we know it's positive. So this is one of my solutions, and then we have the minus radical 19 over 2, and that's our two solutions. All right, not so bad. All right, boom. Write it down. Okay, or we could have done x is equal to plus or minus radical 19 over 2. This would work as well. All right, just to save some time, I'm going to let you guys do the last two, so just go ahead and pause the video. Come on back. All right, welcome back. So I went ahead and worked out those last two for you. Hopefully on this middle one you got 3 comma negative 5, and then on that last one radical 22 over 4 and negative radical 22 over 4. So I would suggest getting in the habit of writing them out the different ways, because different types of platforms and different teachers are going to request different stuff from you. So make sure you know how to do each of them. All right, so that's all I have for you guys. These just take a little bit of practice and just a little bit of exposure to different types of quadratics. So go ahead and play around with that practice. Get it down. If you need help, please reach out. I'm always here to help you. I had a blast. I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.